Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. The direct inquiry line from you to me and my crew. Purchase inquiries for this or any watch you see here on Watchbox Reviews. And today we are discussing a true collector's item. This is an FP Journe Chronometre Resonance Platinum 38mm brass movement. This is the purist's choice and the collector's choice if you're accumulating important works by independent artisans as well as early works by FP Journe specifically. Now the timepiece here represents effectively the second major model and one of the two pillars of the FP Journe brand. FP Journe making watches under his own name as a wristwatch manufacturer from 1999 with the Tourbillon Remontoire and from 2000 with the Chronometre Resonance. The timepiece, as you see it here, made of platinum, 38mm, a case size discontinued after 2015, but one of the earliest offerings. You can see the platinum case, graceful, unmarred, all of high polish with beautiful arcing, short cropped, tightly downturned lugs. If you measure this watch from lug to lug, it's a wonderfully compact 44.5mm with a 20mm spacing between the lugs and a lovely 9mm thick case that slides easily underneath any cuff. I'm going to zoom out for a moment, do a wrist shot on my 16cm circumference wrist so you get a sense of the fit of this one. Let me see if I can get it into focus. We'll zoom in a little bit more so you can see it better. But the watch, 38mm, easy to wear, a traditional size, and one that's now considered the collector's preference in FP Journe, as the 40s and even 42s are quite easy to source. The 38's a bit scarcer, and again, more sought because of it. We'll talk more about some of the unique features of this watch in a moment. As you can see, 16cm circumference wrist, the watch wears quite easily. I can recommend it for wrists as small as 13.5cm circumference. Now let's get a little bit closer, get the watch back into focus, and talk a bit about some of the details here that are quite special. Let's start with the strap, which is basic but worth mentioning. Curved spring bars, so you can see there's no impediment to the motion of the strap. Alligator leather on both sides, a premium feature of newer Journe straps. The strap is not original to the watch, which originates in the early 1990s. The strap came later, and you can see that because the double gator instead of calfskin on the underside, it makes for a more durable strap, but it's a more recent Journe construction. And then you can see that there are pull-tab spring bars on the underside, so you can easily remove the strap. You'll also appreciate that there is a matching platinum pin buckle that accompanies the platinum case. You can see the characteristic features of the Journe case design. This is fairly uniform with the exception of special models, the Vagabondage and the Sporting series. You can see there's a crown with a double dimple and a rope-like knurling on its flank that's used for setting both of the independent time displays. It is a true dual-time watch. You can set the time separately. You also use it to wind the twin mainspring barrels for the two parallel movements that exist inside of the watch. And you might wonder, well, why does the power reserve indicator move towards 0 as you wind the watch? That's because FP Journe's horological heroes were not just Abraham Louis Breguet, but also manufacturers of marine chronometers who oftentimes would use 0 as the hours since the watch was wound, because marine chronometers, or deck clocks used for navigation of ships, needed to be wound regularly. So every 24 hours, the same time of day, you would wind the clock. And by having an indicator that indicated how many hours from original winding, you would always know when you were 24 hours from the last winding. So this is a marine chronometer style inverse power reserve for the 42-hour power reserve. Now the dial, as you can see, is a yellow gold that was more common in the early days of FP Journe production, so this watch is scarce on a couple of counts. The early Resonance design, which is a balanced dial, after 2009 it would have featured a 24-hour dial that was cropped by a bezel. Some people call it the winking watch design. Not everyone loves it. Later on, the 40mm size became much more common until it was eventually discontinued. The yellow gold dials were uncommon at first, and they became less so with time. And then ultimately, it's not just about the dial and the 38mm case size, it's about the fact that this is an original brass movement. Now you can see back when the cases were made by Eleanor outside of Paris, FP Journe's original case maker, not only would you get double hallmarks and the like, because the hallmarks are both French and Swiss on the case, but back in the day you would also get this little stamp right up until about mid-2005 letting you know the year that the case was made. So you can see 02 reference R for resonance right there. So another nod to the way F.P. Journe was back before he owned his own case manufacturer. The movement. It is the caliber 1499, but in a very different form than we know it today. As you can see, twin ratchet wheels for twin mainspring barrels. The ratchet wheels would later disappear on the rose gold versions of this movement. You would see their pivots, but not the ratchet wheels themselves over the barrel. Also, later on, rose gold movements would dispense with this silvered rhodium-plated brass. So while brass inherently is worth less than gold, the rose gold movements are more common, and thus the brass is more collectible. Manual wind, 21/6 beat rate for each of the balances, 36 joules. Each balance is adjusted in 6 positions and free sprung for durability as well as precise regulation. Now, manual wind for both barrels, and I should mention that it is a unusual watch in the way it works as well as the way it's adjusted. The multi-position adjustment of the balances is conventional, but the resonance phenomenon, which F.P. Journe borrowed from clockmaker Untitled Chapter, is effectively the idea that the parasitic losses created by the balances and the escapements radiate outward, and there is a mutual interference. There is a connection, an immaterial connection between these two balances and escapements. Like pendulums or metronomes arranged in series in close proximity, once set and in action, they will eventually synchronize because of those parasitic emanations mutually interfering. So if one wants to run fast, the other will slow it down and vice versa. And that is the resonance phenomenon, the idea that these balances will eventually synchronize and self-regulate. And you can see that there is a little gold bolt with a pinion gearing underneath, and then there is a black polished rack right underneath that. And so by adjusting that bolt, you move this half bridge or balance cock towards and away from the other balance, and you continue this until you achieve the resonance effect in testing. As you can see, the movement is handsomely finished, though not perfectly finished, as it is early F.P. Journe. There's more evidence that this was made by a human, and its imperfection makes it more collectible. Black polished screws, Côte de Genève, satin finishing on wheels, as well as you can see the ratchet wheels, but also the wheels of the train. And there's engine turning on the base plate with a chamfer on the edge of the bridges, as well as in the jewel and screw countersinks. You could set the 2 times, as I said, independently, but you're still going to want them to synchronize. And because the resonance effect requires approximately 7 to 10 minutes to take full purchase, the time may be set correctly, hours and minutes, but you might not have synchronized seconds hands, which is part of the aesthetic appeal of the resonance phenomenon. So what you do is you pull the little trigger down at 4 o'clock on the dial and you recenter and synchronize them. 30 meters water resistant, so it's not an aquatic watch, but then again, you don't take a timepiece of this exceptional rarity and historical importance and plunge it into the water. You've got an elegant 48. For that, you can see this Chronometre Resonance 38 brass movement and make it yours on the Watchbox. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com.